Hi, it's Steve. In this video, we'll show you how to disassemble your Samsung smooth top range for servicing. We'll show you where the major components are located and how to access them easily. If you have a specific part that you're looking to replace, simply visit our website and using your model number, search for that part and we may have a specific repair video just for you. Now, if we wanted to access some of the components in our control panel here, we would need to gain access through the back. That will allow us to access the controls for the surface burners, as well as our oven clock, our outlet, and our circuit breaker. So to do that, we'd need to pull our range far enough forward that we can remove the back panel. Now that we have access to the back of the range, we'll begin by removing this upper access panel on the back of the console, typically held in place with some Phillips screws. So we'll just remove all of these. And be sure to support that panel as you remove the last screw. And we just tilt that back and lift it up and away. Now with that back panel removed, we have access to our infinite heat switches for the dual burners and single burners, both right and left. We'll also have access to our mini circuit breaker and the outlet located on the top of the console. As well, we have access to the main and the individual harness connections to the individual bake and broil elements, as well as the convection fan motors. Now as well, from the back of the range, we can gain access to some more internal components such as the bake and broil elements, our convection fan motors, our temp sensors, and the light socket. To do so, we'll need to remove this main back panel. It's held in place with some screws and a couple of hooks at the top to hold it in place. To remove it, we'll simply start by removing those retaining screws. There's typically one right beside the power cord box that we'll need to remove as well. Now with the screws removed, we'll just pull that panel away on the bottom, lift up on it gently, and that will unhook the two tabs on the side that fit into the respective slots. Now with the back panel removed, we have access to all of those components mentioned. Terminals for our broil element are located at the top center, so you could do a continuity test for that element. As well, you'll note that there is a small harness coming out between there, and that is our temp sensor, which is located inside of the oven and is attached to the bracket of that broil element. Over the left side here, we have our limit thermostat, and that is used to make sure that the oven doesn't overheat. This model uses 3 different convection fan motors. If you need to remove them, the mounting screws are located from the back, but there's also a cover inside of the oven that you would need to remove the actual fan blades from each of those individual motors. As well, from the back we have access to our oven light socket and the door lock motor that is used in the self-clean mode. Closer to the bottom, we have our inlet terminal strip where our line cord attaches to the bottom of it and the main wire harness attaches to the top of it. Also, the wires that attach to the terminals of the hidden bake element are accessible. You can then do continuity test on that bake element. Because it is hidden, it's not easily removable. You can't remove it from the inside, but we can cut this insulation, remove the mounting screws, and actually pull that element out through the back once we've removed the terminal block and bracket. Now, we referred to our broil element, our convection fan motors, and our temp sensor as being accessible for testing from the rear. If we need to replace them, we'll need to go in through the front of the oven side. To do so, it's always easier, we find, to remove the oven door. It's a simple process. This style of range uses door stops, one on each side. Pull those out and press them firmly up against the hinge. We'll do both sides. Now with both of those stops in position, so again we'll just lift up on that door until it comes up against those stops. We'll then lift the whole door or tilt it forward to almost a closed position, and then we can pull those hinges right out of the range. Now with the oven door removed, it makes it much easier to service any of the interior components in the oven, such as removing the cover for the convection fan motors or accessing the broil element or temp sensor. It's just easier if we don't have to lean over that door and it comes off so easily. So if we were going to do any servicing to those convection fan motors, we'd need to remove this cover. A single retaining screw on the bottom and another on the top. That gives us access to removing the retaining nuts that secure the blades to the motor shaft, and then we can pull those motors out through the back. Now if we were replacing that temp sensor, we'd need to remove the single screw that secures that mounting plate to the broil element bracket, and then we can disconnect the harness from behind and pull that sensor out to replace it. Now if we had to replace that broil element, we'd need to remove those two mounting screws at the back once we've taken the sensor off of it, and also two more screws on the bracket at the front that secure it to the ceiling of the oven. Now the only other thing that we can typically replace from the front of the oven would be the door gasket itself. Now, it is held to the oven liner with little clips. The clips are contained inside of the mesh of that gasket, and they push in through holes on the face of that oven liner, so we would simply pull those out, remove any that break off, and then simply insert the new gasket, tucking the ends into the open slots at the bottom. Now if we needed to replace our main glass top or any of the surface elements, you would first of all need to remove that top from the range. It's typically held in place with some screws along the bottom front edge of the top that secure it to the body of the oven. And then there will be some wire harnesses that will need to be disconnected at the back. This particular model uses 3 screws across the front, so we'll remove those next. Now the main top is secured to the oven body through these 3 screws and this mounting bracket at the front. So to remove the top, we'd need to first of all take out these 3 screws. So with those screws removed, that should allow that top to be lifted up. Before we try to pull it forward, we're going to go to the back of the range and disconnect the wire harnesses. Now, typically we'll find a harness on each side. So we'll locate that harness connector. We'll depress that locking tab. Pull the harness apart, and we'll need to disconnect this ground wire as well. Just remove that screw. And take note that the ground wire typically has a machine thread type of screw attached rather than a self-tapping screw. Now on the opposite side, again we have a harness connector that we'll need to disconnect. It's a larger one on this side, and there are 2 retaining tabs that we need to release. Once we separate that harness, we can pull that down out of the way. There may also be a separate harness as well. That typically goes to the door light switch, and it's not part of the main top, so you can leave that one disconnected. Now before we remove that top completely, if you're replacing it because it was damaged, we want to make sure that we have removed any broken glass that might cause an injury. So we're just going to grasp both sides of that top closer to the front, lift up on it, just lift up gently on the back and pull it forward, And just check to make sure that the wire harness connectors come through those two holes at the back. So it's safer to pull those harnesses through by hand. We can then remove that top. We can set it on a suitable surface, or we can either transfer those elements to a new top or simply replace any individual element. Thank you so much for watching this video. We certainly hope that it was helpful to you. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing.